Good afternoon, Board and Commissioners. Over to you, Chair Harrington.
Thank you, Angie. Board Clerk Aguilera, thank you. Welcome everyone to the Washington County Board of Commissioners work session for Tuesday, July 16th. We have a very full afternoon today, so hopefully we'll be able to move through topics well together. Commissioner Rogers is on his way in, so he will be with us shortly. Otherwise, there are four of us here in attendance right now. Myself, Chair Catherine Harrington, Vice Chair Commissioner Nafisa Fye, District Commissioners Nafisa Fye, Pam Treese, and Jerry Willie. The first item on our agenda is an update on the supportive housing services potential referral. Take it away, Ms. Doyle.
Thank you, Chair Harrington, and good afternoon, Board. For your record, Erin Doyle, your Senior Government Relations Manager, on behalf of the entire team that has been working on this SHS work. We just thought we'd send one of us up here today, and then they'll whisper answers in my ear. So after our conversation last week that took place the same day as Metro's council presentation from their chief operating officers, wanted to circle back on some of the issues, and then per your direction, provide you with a draft letter for your consideration and direction on in sending to the Metro Council as they proceed with addressing and deciding what to do with the COO's recommendations. So just wanted to give you some brief updates about what the staff to staff conversation has been, and then ask how we did in drafting your letter for your consideration. So in our conversation with staff, this was of course last week, so maybe it's changed. We will have a check-in with them later this week to figure out what they're going to be saying, but staff indicated that they will be bringing back a further conversation with their council, seeking explicit direction on what their next steps should be to be included in a resolution that resolves what the council wants staff to do. And instead of having a public hearing on anything that would require action on the 26th of next week, they would instead just use that time as a work session. In particular, they want to get guidance for if there should be a resolution directing staff related to indexing the threshold for individual taxpayers to be done by the council's order, which is permitted under the terms of the ballot measure. Second item for consideration is to get more concrete decisions out of the council on the elected to elected conversation. And then based on the rest of the recommendations that were outstanding, work to have the council prioritize for their staff how they want that work to be done. Included in that conversation was the potential for an August 1st consideration of a resolution, or me pushing that out a little bit later, depending upon the will and direction that council gives them. Also, what has happened is the council president and the chair the council president is going to work on county chair outreach to all three counties, including our chair. The final piece of this is when staff had the conversation where we got this information, I was very clear about our capacity concerns and the need for a very specific and well outlined work plan to determine what plates were being put on the table, what table the plates were being put on, and who was expected to come to those tables. To overextend a metaphor, which is one of my key skills. Essentially, they agreed that the capacity problem is recognized on a staff to staff level. They have said they're also worried about their own internal capacity, but we have not seen a work plan yet. And we're hoping that their conversation with their council will lead to an actual work plan before anything further moves down onto or an invitation to continue the conversation. So with that brief and less than specific update, but as specific as I could get, I would turn it back to the board to discuss the letter that was proposed and drafted for your consideration. we believe as staff that we have encapsulated the conversation that your board had last week with us, as well as the talking points that you all gave a thumbs up to and how you would use them. So with that, I turn it back to you for your direction and or direct approval. And Chair, I don't know if there was anything you wanted to add to this conversation.
In addition to discussing the letter, I would like us as a board to discuss next steps with regard to August and into September. So why don't we start with the letter? Commissioners.
Well, I guess I could, somebody else says, I'll start. Generally, I guess I like the letter. Does communicate a message. And we need to continue to, I guess, be communicating that message. There is one word I was just wondering if we needed to have that word in there or a different one, and that is under down towards the bottom, establishing a clear and reasonable timeline. And then the next bullet is clarifying the problems that reform would be addressing before proceeding. Goes on to say Metro must demonstrate honest clarity of the problems. And to me, that is an implication that they are not being honest. Is that what we're saying?
I believe the intention of that phrasing is that the clarity needs to be transparent is possibly the honest clarity of the problem is we aren't hiding behind just a conversation around affordable housing anymore, that we are having an honest conversation that we are talking about two things now, affordable housing funding and SHS reform as it moves forward. And that needs to be clearly stated and agreed to if that is the goal. If that's not the goal, if really all we're trying to do is find funding for affordable housing, then clearly state that, give that specific and honest direction that lifts up that to the daylight to the entire community. So it's not an implication that they have been dishonest. It is an implication that it has not been as clear and true as the breadth of the conversation from the way they named the roundtable to be the regional affordable housing stakeholder table to a much broader conversation that's looking at roles and responsibilities under the supportive housing services measure.
I have a slightly different take.
Okay, go ahead.
Having read the entire document, as well as having watched the whole work session, I think there are things being asserted with regard to accountability and transparency that I find difficult to have applied to all three counties as though we've all performed the same. So.
But I don't disagree with what you said initially either, the lead into that. So I would agree with that. I don't know how we differentiate because we've had a much more successful program. But is that where Metro's going with this? I guess to me, we're all painted with the same brush and they have a focus that quite frankly isn't the same thing that we think should be done. They're trying to figure out how to carve out affordable housing out of this and how to cut some out of it and rejigger this stuff. And it matters not, honestly. It doesn't seem to me that it matters not the success we've had with our program versus other counties. So
that's where we're just trying to make sure it's clear with regard to what problems are being solved by this effort.
Yeah.
And that's where we're asking them to demonstrate that clarity of the problems.
Okay,
That's all.
and I guess, so how would you go about doing that? Do you think this letter doesn't communicate that message to them, that we're asking for that kind of clarity?
No, I think that's what that sentence is absolutely saying.
Oh, must demonstrate the honest clarity of it. Oh, I don't disagree with that. Again, the word honest kind of struck me like you're being dishonest, and so I was taking the contrary thing, but I
I'll
don't
share
like
the
word
rest of
clarity.
my comments a little later.
Okay,
Okay.
all right. Go ahead, Pam.
First of all, it was a good letter.
Yeah.
And I think it set the stage well, which was important to me but I also think, along with Jerry and listening to what Catherine said, now I understand the second bullet as clarifying what's the problem? You know,
Mhm.
what's going on here? And I think it's almost as though there are multiple issues
Mhm.
and it says problems. I agree with that. And I don't know, I didn't pick out of this when I read it the first time that they would be clarifying their problems with a particular county or not. And but that's what, now that we're talking, I can see that here. And that's something that I think is very important. To
We
avoid.
have a COO, let me reiterate, we have a COO recommendation.
Mhm.
It's important that we hear, what does the council want us to problem solve on together? So maybe what we might consider doing is inserting the word council.
Yes. Yes.
We're
And
not trying to boss the COO around or any of Metro staff. We just want clarity.
we're missing the backdrop.
Yeah.
We're missing the honest discussion of the backdrop. It's not about just having extra money. So I think that's, and if it, so I see both of your points. At one point, we do mention the cities, we mentioned the 24 cities, I believe. Yes, in the highlighted part there. Is there any point that we want to clarify the strength of our cities as well? And I was thinking about that bullet, the third bullet down, recognizing and including Washington County's local expertise. Does that extend to the cities in your mind?
Third bullet on page 2 is
Yes,
third
the
bullet?
top, the very top of page 2.
Third bullet in the list, first bullet
Oh.
on page 2.
I'm not, what were you proposing again? Because
When
the cities are sending their letters too.
Our Beaverton, Hillsborough, Tiger.
And the MMC.
Okay, all right.
So what were you suggesting?
I'm asking if the highlighted area or the bolded area, recognizing and including Washington County's local expertise, does that also include the city's local expertise in your mind? Or would it be helpful at all to call that out?
What we were emphasizing in this letter was what we need as Washington County, the entity,
Right.
the governmental unit, as opposed to speaking for the geography and its incorporated cities.
Okay. And as Catherine said, as the chair said, they have their opportunity to write letters.
And we do call for joint consideration of their needs. That's why we included the 24 cities.
Yeah,
up
and I
above.
did read that. Bottom line is the letter says what we talked about. Thank you.
I'll chime in. I agree. This is a very well done, Erin and the team. The letter, I really appreciated how high level it was. And for me, I was reading what are we saying yes to? And then I was looking at what are we saying no to? And I think our no is the recommendations that was proposed to the council. And I didn't see that reflected in the letter. Like what in the proposal we're saying no to? Are we saying all of the proposals are no for us and these are our yeses, what we want out of it? Because these are really great yeses. But I think we need to identify clearly which of those proposals we are absolutely no as a board, or if we're all no in all of those.
So towards that end, and this is part of my comments, we're not ready to do that. You all need to read the document fully. And we need to have a meeting with our staff about all these recommendations. But before we do that, we need to hear the direction from the Metro Council. Because the council determines what the direction is for the COO. And from their view of the region. Okay, what it is they want to move forward with. So this is the fulfillment of their prior direction to the COO. Do some studying, do some data, which she's done, and bring us recommendations. And I can go on about that, but we need to do more work together with support from our staff before
Before we send them.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with your direction. then.
Commissioner Rogers, we're on the very first topic. Yes. Any comments?
No, thank you, Captain.
Okay.
Can I ask just one quick question? I've got document here that came from you, Catherine, on July 9th, and it has key findings and recommendations.
Mhm.
And that came from
Metro.
Metro. That was the letter from Metro. And actually,
That was an email that Metro sent to the members of the Metro Regional Housing Stakeholder Advisory Table. And they also sent that same email to the members of the Oversight Committee and the Tri-County Planning Body.
correct. And then on top of that, some talking points regarding that. And I don't know who wrote the talking points, but they're very good.
That was staff's joint work.
Okay.
That
Washington
was
County.
our,
Yeah. Yeah.
our draft talking points from our work session last Tuesday.
And I guess for me, in reading both of those, the COO recommendation and then our talking points on top of that, I'm thinking that it's kind of started a direction of conversation. And I guess, so when I read our letter here that we've got, it was lacking the specificity that certainly the COO's recommendation did, which highlighted a number of things that we are not in agreement with. But we're kind of stepping back here, and when you say clarifying the problems that the reform would be addressing before proceeding, yep, I get that. I just want to know when we're going to get granular. with it.
So that was what you were suggesting. How about if I take my turn here?
Okay.
Okay, as chair, for our standard operating procedures, I talk last. So, to the letter, I think it is a fine initial letter. I think that, we should include in that second bullet on the bottom of page 2, the word council. So it says Metro Council. Okay. I also think at some point in this letter, we should make it clear that this board has not yet had the opportunity to fully take in the Metro COO recommendations, nor to hear direction from the Metro Council. So getting at the point that we're writing this letter prior to having the benefit of direction from the Metro Council, as well as time for us to discuss it. I have conveyed to the Metro Council President that we have a very full plate on our own, and we only have so many board meeting days as well. I went through the whole rolling agenda that we have as well. And I have asked our staff through Ms. Angie and the ACAs to please do the work through the rolling agenda process to put in all the different placeholders that we already know today we need to act on by the end of the year. So I have some, and I think we need to add a paragraph in the letter or some sentences that get to the fact that we have additional work to do. Let me start with my points. Let me step back. Our organization has moved many mountains on many fronts. We've needed to do this, and our follow through continues. And I am very proud of what the organization, through the direction of this board, has done and continues to do all through this whole fiscal year, right? This fiscal year that we're operating under. So it's not just to the end of the year, but beyond. It's clear to me that there is a sense of urgency that Metro is feeling, that to act, and their work in this domain seems reasonable to me, although I know they have some missteps. In my opinion, their county relations and engagement is left wanting, and that includes the council, I think their staff, their COO, and the council internalizing the information that the counties, the 3 county chairs, and our subject matter experts provided at the April 17th meeting, as well as through a March 21st letter. So that's a little concerning to me. As I mentioned, I have read the document. I have listened to the whole video. There's a lot of good work here to build upon, but we really do need that direction. It's very clear to me that there will be a tax reduction effort, and they will be taking action, making an effort with regard to accountability and oversight and more. I'm trying to make sure that I'm displaying a measured response here because, as I mentioned, they're trying to deal with problems that they see from their viewpoint, and that's very valid and reasonable. I'm a little concerned about the level of respect or not shown for us. I'll just speak for Washington County, given the breadth and depth of our responsibilities and services. Just engaging with Metro Council President Peterson last Wednesday and since just has me a bit concerned about that. They don't want to lose momentum. Well, wait a second. What does it mean for us to participate in that momentum? I'm really concerned about that. It's a really useful read, but I'm struck by it seems like it was written, the recommendation sections are written by 2 different people. The second part of the document, we're seen as partners. The first part of the document comes across to me like we're contractors. So the lack of partnership that's expressed and demonstrated by this document and the next steps that were outlined in the meeting concern me a little bit. They're moving along to define and adopt a resolution, and I'm hoping that that resolution will acknowledge the information that the counties provided April 17th. And in addition to our needing to make sure we have a good understanding of what they're hoping to move forward with, as well as what this document says relative to those efforts, I think we might want to invite the Metro Council to a joint meeting with us so that we have the benefit of understanding the polling data, resets of data, the stakeholder input, and really helps us solve the staff bandwidth problem that we have. Because in working with Ms. Angie, we don't have the bandwidth to do all the things that are already on our plate, let alone Metro Council wanting us to continue our participation in this effort, including at a rate that they want. So I thought that I would share the idea of a joint meeting here. We don't need to act on this yet. I wanted to pose the data and the situation as I see it. I mean, not data from the standpoint of all these recommendations, but you can see I have some pink is pretty hot, jaw-dropping showstopper issues for me. Orange, key issues and concern, and green is positive. There's green tags here, people. Right? There's green here. But it's very clear to me that we, the board, are going to have to say no to something or some things that are on our plate because we have to make room for how this train is moving, but more importantly, for our staff under the leadership of both Ms. Angie and Ms. Courtney Duke-Dreesen. So I think in terms of the next step, the only comments I have are add that word council, if your thumbs up to that. And then add something somewhere that indicates that we have some next steps as a board to engage or to hear back from the Metro Council with regard to their direction. And for us to have time together to develop our board understanding of these recommendations. And then possibly consider a joint meeting with them. We don't have to say that today, certainly. But I think those two next steps of us, or the one, us being able to take this in and discuss it as a board and do some further process problem solving with our staff is really important.
So I'd be happy to draft that and bring a letter referring back.
I just want to mention to the board that I have sent to your email boxes, again, that full 52-page report. So that's on the top of your email boxes for members of our public and audience or who may be listening. That report is accessible on Metro's website.
May I respond to your comments?
Certainly.
Uh, They're very thoughtful comments. And as I'm thinking about what my personal issues are here, it's hard to react to recommendations when you don't grasp the same problem. And I think that's where we started in the letter about clarity of problems. So I like the idea of establishing a commonality with Metro Council by having a discussion. I think that's a good idea. And I would ask that maybe this isn't in your thought process, but I want to make sure that the COO was there as well, because I don't know that, and I'm going to make this statement, I don't know that the Metro Council grasps what the problem is either. So I don't have any evidence that they do or that they don't.
So what I wanted to do today, beyond contributing my thoughts and for us approving a letter for the immediate time, is to pose the idea to you and to give you the opportunity of time to reflect on that until our next meeting, August 6th. So I'm not trying to press that idea today.
I understand. I'm just responding to the idea, and I'm looking forward to future discussions about it.
Okay.
I think from my standpoint, it was, I thought we started this conversation, not because we wanted to, but Metro started this conversation several months ago, and we were talking about how we can fund affordable housing under the umbrella of the SHS money. Fairly, to me, simple, straightforward. How do we do this? And instead, we get a let's throw everything out and start over recommendation from the COO. So I guess, how did we get from let's just talk about affordable housing to let's start all over again?
So if I could,
Yeah, absolutely.
I took a couple of different steps back and looked back at the IGA between us and Metro that we approved on January 18th, 2022. And I think part of what we need our staff to do is to look back at this as well towards April, August. My same date problem begins with the letter A, spit it out. No, not April, August 6th. And support us in a conversation amongst ourselves. I'm not a lawyer, and I don't know the IGA like the back of my hand. Big caveat there. But there are terms in here about what it means to terminate the IGA, and it has to be by mutual agreement. So Metro can't just say, oh, let's do it over, or however you just put it. So I think we want to give some informal thumbs up here today on some direction to our staff. One is with regard to the letter. Another is to re-review the IGA. And I think there's another one, and I don't intend to get into the details here, but there is information in this document, page 43 through the end, that talks about possible revenue scenarios And I would recommend that one of the informal directions we give to our staff today, and I use the word informal because I'm just doing this verbally, so don't hang too much on the words, is develop an estimate of what we, Washington County, might have to cut from our SHS portfolio as a result of Metro moving forward to utilize carryover dollars in ways different than what we've already put into plans for the next fiscal years, which we've already shared with them. And it's not final, or this following up on this information wouldn't be final, but it's just potential. And so that's another ask that I think we should provide to our staff for August 6th, along with, what are we going to have to cut so that our subject matter experts in housing, our subject matter experts in government relations, our subject matter experts in legal, our subject matter experts from the CAO on down, what are we going to have to say no to in order to respond to these requirements that the COO has recommended to her council?
But do we know the number? You say we're
No.
gonna take cuts, but
No, and
how deep are the cuts?
so the elected to elected discussions are being proposed as the vehicle for such political versus technical discussions. The extent of information that is being made publicly is in this document.
Okay.
So we can only go with the information that Metro is providing us. We've been asking for months for some guidance there. And this asserts what they want to be able to do, or at least what the COO has recommended to the council. And this letter that we're proposing is asking for the council to provide direction for us to potentially build around. Otherwise, we're grasping at straws, and we don't have the bandwidth. We have no capability for putting any energy into something that may not be necessary. We're going to have to make cuts just to do the work that Metro is requiring us as a county to do. I'm not arguing that it would be good work to do. I'm just trying to figure out the basics of how can we do it. So these are difficult times. I don't mean to get so long-winded. Pardon me if I am. Well, thank you, Commissioner Rogers. So what do you think, commissioners? It's time for us to give some direction or not.
My honest opinion, again, once again, the letter's well written. I'm listening to what Jerry was saying a minute ago, and I think Pam trying to tease it out as well. As it, we've been down this road before. I mean, it's the same story, just a different verse, different day. It's well written, Aaron. You're talking about some conglomeration of counties all together. I don't know that Multnomah County and Clackamas is the same exact position. Maybe they are. At what point, and maybe I'll get more blunt than Jerry did, but at what point do we, he calls it granular, but what point do we simply say, we're concerned at this point, here's our preliminary, I like the idea of saying that this is final. Here's our preliminary response to today's edition. Tomorrow will be a different edition. Next week, a different one. But at some point, we as a county will not be in approval of the measure. I mean, at what point do you say that? To say we're not in favor? Unless you have some serious conversations. I like the idea about the joint meeting. I like the idea of talking to those folks, but I just feel like we're almost like a committee throwing information and they're saying, thank you, but you know, we're gonna make the decision we're gonna make. So I'm not being disparaging. I just trying to say, I just feel like it's same tune, just a different day. Feels that way. So, you know, in my honest opinion, that would be my passion for myself.
Yeah, and so I think hopefully by the August 6th work session, we would have a Metro Council directions of summary of direction. Okay. Right now, from watching the meeting and talking to Council President Peterson, there will be a May 2025 referral. It will reduce the tax rate. It will make changes with regard to accountability and oversight. And it will include other things.
Pretty broad.
And
Thanks.
so
I want
I'm
to.
doing my best.
I want to say something to you.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Yeah, good. You've knocked yourself out. I can't speak for the other three over there, but you've knocked yourself out. You've done a really good job of all of this.
Trying to keep up.
Well, but you're not in the position of steering the bus. That's the problem. And we're not steering the bus. Somebody else is steering the bus. We're saying, can you please let us on so we can help you steer the bus? Except we're being awfully polite about it, and they're still steering. So that's my frustration. I won't be on August 6th. I'll be on vacation, but to you, kudos. To you, kudos. To us for listening, kudos. Where are we going? I have no idea, and where they're gonna accept it, I don't know either. But I like your idea of saying, unless you come talk to it.
So could you tell me once again your conversation with Council President Peterson? You said a referral in May of 25. And what was the other two?
There will be changes to address accountability and oversight
Okay.
and more. And that and more includes the scope of responsibilities for this proposed regional investment board, the scope of what they'll be looking at. We don't know when they will be formed, when they will be tasked with developing this new approach. I mean, Metro, according to this document, the slides that were presented and my watching the meeting, they want to renegotiate the IGA today. And I'm like, okay, with what board bandwidth and what staff bandwidth? Because I remember the big lift that it was in 2021 through our adoption in January of 22. So that was a full year. So anyway, I hinted at timeframes last Tuesday. So we just need some time.
So Chair, if I will make that small add a couple of sentences per your recommendation, given that I saw a generalized agreement to that, and add the word council into that particular line, not just refer to Metro, but the Metro Council giving direction. I will work with Miss Angie, Miss Kyle, and Molly and Jess to get and Courtney to work on a presentation on the 6th that starts you on this more granular look. And I think those are the next steps for staff in this. And I will bring the draft letter so that you have time to contemplate it during this work session and give us direction if you want it to go out before August.
If I can just build on what Ms. Doyle had said, part of that August 6th would include the review of the Metro Council direction. Also, this provides more time for the board to re-review the report because it does take a couple times to actually go through the report to digest it. And then also the request for us to look at the potential SHS cut scenarios based on the fiscal information included in the report. I will also indicate that County Council is currently working on a legal opinion of the IGA for your board. And Courtney has informed me that that will come before your August 6th meeting.
And we have a very full set of agendas in August and September. So we're going to have to figure out what comes off of the August 6th agenda in order to have a good hour for this topic then, and darn, that's not the direction we wanted to go in. So
Yeah, put everything.
that 6th meeting, woohoo.
Obviously, put every other one that Roy's not going to be here. Goes without saying. But again, I think I don't have a problem with the letter, but I feel like the letter is we're saying, can we sit down and negotiate what time the train's leaving the station, and it already left. So when we get, and I'm looking at this document that you just sent, Tanya, and we get to the recommendation on page 6, and they're talking about reducing the cost of overall housing for affordable housing, and you're going, seriously, we're talking, we're significantly expanding the scope of what it is that we started. So in other words, we all started to say, how can we provide funding to eliminate houselessness in our region? And now we're trying to dictate the cost of affordable housing. We're trying to figure out how to get more money for affordable housing. We're trying to renegotiate the IGA. We're talking about creating another oversight committee that Metro manage. I mean, we're changing the entire thing, and we're still being nice in our communication. So I'll wait till August 6th, but I think we need to be very, very specific about the IGA and what legal rights we have with that IGA, and with specifically what aspects of this recommendation we think are beyond the scope of our original intent, and what we think about the ones that we need to modify. So to me, I just read this and it kind of just pisses me off, quite frankly, by the time I get to the last one. So
but before you put that powder,
somebody
before you put that powder into action, let me share more clearly my comment about their work seeming reasonable. There's the COO recommendation, and then there's the council discussion at that meeting. And when they started this effort, it was very much considering many aspects of affordable housing, not just the most difficult problems that the affordable housing bond measure dealt with, the people with the lowest incomes and family size units, but they gave direction so that staff looked at the whole problem, including workforce housing going up to 80% of area median income. They have changed they seem to me, from watching that video, changed their direction and narrowed it down. And their discussion leads me to believe that at least some of the counselors want to ensure that the flexibility for affordable housing would be achieved with or through the counties, though that direction is not set yet, because it seems also a little mixed in with some discussing, well, numbers and wanting to be clear about numbers, whereas the other is, well, we can't be that. So that's where I think they need some more time. So I'm trying to buy us all some time to catch up with this, reflect on it. So they have a clearer path for that in the next couple of weeks than we do. So I've made a proposal that we come back to it August 6th, and I really do believe that we will know more by then. Fingers crossed.
I'm not sure we're gonna like what we know more of.
Well, so
Others,
I'm just asking that we all consider, there's our preliminary letter,
Mhm.
and then we certainly reserve the right to send future letters based upon further understanding. Absolutely, I'm there with you.
True. Staff can also be helpful between now and August 6th. I almost said October, skipping to fall. To have one-on-ones with you after you read the report, to kind of talk through the report prior to that meeting. So let us know through your staff assistants if that would be helpful.
This, my question or my issue that I'm going to bring up, it's not pertinent to August 6th. I'm trying to step back just a moment and look at how this all came about and what is the nature of Metro as an organization? What is the nature of the current council at Metro as an organization? And how do we take this conversation that we're having and learn from it and look to what may happen in the future? Do we need to take some lessons here as we look toward transportation, other issues as well? So I'm raising that because it appears to me that this action is a strong and distant reach for Metro. I'm not saying it's not within their purview, but attitudinally, it doesn't seem to be consistent with previous behaviors. So I'm just raising that, and I'm not saying there's anything that we can do other than to be prepared as we move forward in partnership on other issues as well.
And for me, you're touching the nerve of, in order for us to move forward in partnership, we need capacity.
Yeah.
From the board, from CAO and staff, from county council and staff.
Is this on impacts long-term agenda, say next 6 months?
I have started as chair of MPAC. When these discussions began, I asked Metro to provide, I asked for the COO to come and give us updates at MPAC. There is no direction from Metro to provide updates to MPAC. It was the chair's request. So the answer is no, we do get updates, but it's
Nothing planned at this point.
no, and not.
Maybe it's a little early.
What?
October might be a good time.
Erin, for me, I'm thumbs up on that letter. And the next steps that you highlight for the board to have a robust discussion about the recommendation of Metro, and then to take a position, a board position, or and then to put together a letter or whatnot to express that. So I'm okay with the next steps in this letter that you're highlighting.
So as presiding officer, I think I have summarized for you the direction of the board. And we look forward to a near final draft from you later today so that we can take a last look at that and just give a simple thumbs up.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank
Board.
you. Good job. All righty. Here, time schedule already. Sorry about that, folks, but a discussion that needed to be had. So our next topic is the 2025 state and federal legislative agenda development. Come on up, staff.
Aaron is like, not me, not me. Not me.
Enough chairs?
Don't have to be the one person.
Sorry, I'm used to having that whole table to myself, you know.
Okay, good afternoon, board. For the record, my name is Carly Silva Gabrielson, one of your government relations managers. I'll pass the mic down.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Pablo Nieves Valenzuela, Government Relations Manager.
Zaka Khan, Government Relations Manager here at Washington County.
Good afternoon, Tracy Rainey, Government Relations Manager for Clean Water Services.
Wonderful. And to get started, we're just going to go over the agenda quickly. Luckily, this is not the first time that you all are seeing the majority of this information, so we might be able to make up a little time here. But just quickly, the purpose of this presentation is to go over our policy questions and the framing of the 2025 federal legislative agenda and state legislative agenda. We'll touch on some hot topics and next steps as well. I will click back to this slide at the close of our presentation since it poses some questions, but again, essentially, we just want to discuss the 2025 legislative agenda for federal and state for the county and clean water services. Wonderful. So this is a recommendation from staff that we continue to use the current principles to allow the flexibility to address concepts that come forward at the federal level, specifically to increase the allocation of private activity bonds to allow states to increase their caps and reduce the bureaucratic and arbitrary 50% test to 25%, which will allow more homes to be developed using the private activity bonds, low-income housing tax credits, and locally directed investments, allowing Washington County to continue the important work of developing affordable housing for our community members. And I will pass this on to my colleague.
Okay, great. Thank you for this opportunity today. And this is the first time you are seeing the Clean Water Services proposed federal and state legislative agendas. We pulled together our internal legislative review team over the last couple of months to take a look at the 2024 state and federal priorities and to make recommendations for modifications for 2025. That group consists of a variety of our staff and managers with a variety of expertise, including our regulatory affairs team, community development, and others within the organization. And so on this first slide, you'll see the first two priorities or principles, federal principles out of 4 total. They are largely the same, but I will highlight where there have been changes made and the reasons behind those changes from 2024. The bold text will not be included in the final document. It is just intended to give you a quick snapshot of what the priority is. This first priority on water infrastructure funding was just slightly modified to be more specific about low interest loans, grants, and principal forgiveness. Water infrastructure funding has been and will continue to be one of our top priorities at both the federal and state level. So again, the only change made to this from our internal review team was just to be a bit more specific about grants, low interest loans, and principal forgiveness, which are all areas that we are advocating for. The second item on the slide, utility resilience, efficiency, and safety. Again, only slight changes to this. It is largely the same. The one change that was incorporated in here was around integrated planning approaches, which is the Environmental Protection Agency's policy around longer term planning for utilities. It is not something that's trickled down quite to the state level yet, but is an area that we're interested in and trying to find some incentives that help utilities be able to use that tool. And so that's the only change that was largely made there. And so there's two more of the principles. Do you want me to pause here or do you want me to go to the next slide?
No, I think we're all good.
Okay. The principal item on local conservation program support, that is unchanged from 2024. Again, this just captures the incentives and the programs that are really beneficial within our county, largely partnerships with agriculture that we utilize with the district to partner on water quality improvements. The last one on this slide is climate change and emerging contaminants. Again, largely, this was a principle from 2024. The wording has been changed slightly to be a bit more specific about source control strategies and some of the strategies that we are seeing that are being discussed at both the federal and the state level as well, specific to emerging contaminants such as PFAS. Any questions on the federal principles before I move on?
Go ahead, I have a question.
So refresh my memory on who do you talk to when you're talking about contaminants and I mean, are we dealing directly with the EPA? Do we go above the EPA? How does that work?
We don't go above the EPA. It's not really usually a very effective.
We're not calling it out.
Yeah. It is both work with the agency, with EPA, and then it's also conversations with our federal delegation to just educate and inform them about our role as a utility and what different regulations may mean for us. So it's both the agency level as well as congressional conversation.
So keeping our delegates aware of what the guidelines that EPA is trying to, and so we make them aware of what's going on. So, okay.
Yeah, and there have been bills that have been proposed around PFAS and a variety of different strategies and approaches to it. So again, just from an education, we will implement what we need to implement, but I think just understanding what our role in that space is, source reduction and how important that is, that pollution prevention is so key and is not always discussed, I think, as much as we would like to see.
So I have a comment on this, and this is political positioning, not about content. I would appreciate in terms of our adopting a document with our federal principles for this particular category, that in order to take the widest range possible, I am hopeful that the new Congress will be supportive of emerging contaminants. I don't know how the current Congress or the future Congress as of January will refer to a label of climate change / emerging contaminants. So I would like to see emerging contaminants plus climate change, not an and, but the word plus. Okay.
Okay.
I want to make sure that we are practicing the art of the possible in getting emerging contaminants and pollutants ahead of climate change mentioned. Because I think no matter what happens with the future Congress, that there will be concerns about current constituents and children, and the impact of what we know about contaminants today / pollutants of today, irrespective of what a congressional representative or a US senator may think about climate change. So I'm not trying to change our message, but rather ensure that we're putting our best foot forward politically.
Yes, that's great feedback.
And
Colleagues,
I
what do
like
you
that. I think the focus that I was looking at was including achievable targets, because we know that EPA comes out every year and they want to reduce whatever, I can't remember what you call that, but anyway, the targets get more and more difficult to achieve. So we need to maintain that, because I think, the guidelines we have right now, we've got pretty good water, pretty clean water. So let's not make that worse, considering that we've got more emerging pollutants coming at us. So, yeah, okay.
I have one comment, and that is, and you're not gonna be able to answer this, I can tell you, so you tell me off sometimes, but others might be interested. Now that the Supreme Court has said that the administrative arm of the government's unable to propose lots of changes, it's going to have to come from the legislative branch. And because our advocacy appears to be more with the administrative than the policymakers, I don't know what that means in the future. I mean, so to somebody's point over there, that who do we lobby with? Is it with congressional folks? They're the ones who are going to have, I think, control in the future, not the bureaucracies and not those who are in various bureaus. So administrative is a better way of saying it. Yeah. So it's tricky. I don't know how it's all going to handle. I suspect it's on the county side as well. And I would hope that you will give the board some legal advice and some direction, because you might be out there bleeding your heart with some administrative folk, and there isn't anything they can do about it. And no matter what they propose, it's not going to get through Congress. So it's a very interesting time, to Chair's point about what's the lay of the land. I have no idea what all this means, but maybe it would help to clarify it for us.
That is a big one. And that is one that we have been talking about internally and just thinking through the many areas where that can impact us and how the certainty and how we do things. So I'll kick it over to Elizabeth, but just say again that this principle can be reflective of work with Congress, or it can be reflective of work with an agency such as the EPA. And so we will shift and adapt accordingly. But Elizabeth, I would imagine may have some comments in this space, and it may be a broader conversation for the future, because I do think it's an area that's very interesting and where we are still assessing the many areas that can impact.
Yeah, I mean, with the Director Rogers, great question. It's definitely been something that's been keeping me up at night. I know a lot of other folks. The walking back of Chevron deference, which was the sort of backbone of administrative law, means that federal agencies will no longer get deference. So they can certainly go through their same rulemaking, but now they are just open to the opportunity to have those rulemakings walked back much more easily than before. So the courts will play a larger role. And I think folks that are in our line of business are re-examining how to influence what that looks like and how to make something stick in a meaningful way, right? And I think you're right. It means that Congress, which has not been functioning quite as well as we would necessarily like it to, they're going to need to sharpen their pencils and get a lot more specific in how they write legislation. But we're going to need to see how that actually takes effect at the end of the day.
So we're going to need to move along.
Sorry.
Is the board comfortable with the proposal provided to staff at this juncture with regard to the guiding principle?
Yes. Great. Thank you. And we will be back with and revisions per your suggestions. Okay, so these are the priorities. These are the items that are more specific in terms of the advocacy that we engage in. So kind of narrowing down from broader infrastructure advocacy to some of the specific areas where we do weigh in. Again, we provide a narrative that you'll see in the 2024 federal priorities that we had a narrative document. So today is a check-in to see if we're on the right path, and we will provide that narrative prior to asking for your final adoption. So this one is very familiar at the very top of the list, advancing seismic modifications for Scoggins Dam. It's going to be there probably for at least another 10 years. So we hope that it'll be off of the agenda maybe in 2036, but we are really pleased that Bureau of Reclamation is moving that project forward to reinforce the existing dam.
So your reference is it'll stay on the agenda until construction is done.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, that is.
Thank you for clarifying, because I was thinking, I thought we were going to have this done in like 30.
Yeah, well, construction complete. So We continue to work really closely with our federal delegation. Again, just to make sure that that timeline, that we don't lose ground and that that project continues to move forward efficiently. And we are having a lot of conversations about the local cost share now at this point. So it is getting very real, and we are continuing the advocacy in those areas. Advancing water reuse opportunities. Again, this has not changed from the 2024 agenda. This is for us hugely important for temperature compliance with our Clean Water Act permit, and will continue to be even more important going forward. Supporting further investments in our nation's water infrastructure. In the narrative, we will call out some of the specific areas and funds that we advocate for through that item. And then the last one that's on this, and then there's one more slide after this, water ratepayer assistance. You'll recall this one is unchanged too from 2024, but in 2021, the Congress approved the first ever funding for low-income water ratepayer assistance. So there's continued advocacy from national associations to see additional investment in that program being made permanent. So I can pause there. There is one more slide of priorities.
Yep, good.
Okay, these three are largely unchanged from 2024. So supporting funding to ensure effective management of Wapato Wildlife Refuge. That is ongoing for us, just making sure they have the funds that they need to continue that management of that critical facility. Funding for agricultural conservation incentives and programs. So that would be things that would be included in the Farm Bill when that does pass. It hasn't yet passed, and it's every 5 years. So we're still waiting for a new Farm Bill. And then the last one is, again, a bit more specific, and in the narrative, we'll dive more deeply into the emerging contaminants issue while ensuring producer responsibility. For
on the second one, I would hope that the document would also make reference to partners that we rely upon, such as the Tualatin Soil and Water Conservation District, as well as, yes, the Irrigation District, the Farm Bureau.
Great. I have that note.
Third one, I think that's nice. We've seen the opiate settlements, and that was holding producers to some responsibility. Now with the Chevron, I couldn't remember that title, but with the Chevron, and I don't want some big lengthy. You can tell me off. I don't know how you're going to ensure producer responsibility, but that'll be interesting. I mean, that's what you're saying we're going to do, or going to try to do. That'll be interesting. I like it. I really like it.
Yeah, I'll let you know if we get there.
I'll do it.
And I think that producer responsibility ties back to the source control piece that you were talking about earlier. And I will just mention that at the conference in Singapore, that was really the focus was around source control. That's where the best opportunity is.
Yes, and again, that does echo, I think, largely some of the national agendas too from National Association of Clean Water Agencies, as well as around the conversation of being a passive receiver. Again, I think that from our perspective, the advocacy runs a little bit deeper than that. We also have to take responsibility for what we're accepting as a utility and making sure that we're deploying appropriate treatment. But those technologies right now are only so limited. And the cost then becomes the cost for the ratepayers. And so making sure that we're having a conversation about where do these pollutants originate from, and making sure that we're protecting that ratepayer and making sure we can make investments that make sense for those ratepayers. All right, are we ready to move?
Why don't we also then, where you say while ensuring producer responsibility, we go on to say in furtherance of our protection of ratepayers? Because that's what I think you're really getting at in terms of the priorities of ensuring producer responsibility. Yes, it says environmental and human health.
Yes.
Patrice.
Yeah.
But while ensuring producer responsibility, being clear that our interest with regard to producer responsibility is making sure we're protecting the ratepayers.
ratepayer costs as well.
Yes.
because it would go out of sight. I mean, if
Right.
they actually put contaminants to the per trillionth level, we couldn't build things that would do that. I mean, it's just impossible.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I think it's points well taken.
Yeah.
I just find it amusing. It's really hard. Your job is terribly hard, right?
It's just, it's the clarity of, I don't want some Oregon congressional representative to have hair go on fire because we're talking about producer responsibility writ large. No, we're concerned about producer responsibility as it affects ratepayer costs.
So just to clarify, Chair, would it help if we said and ensuring producer responsibility, not while? Because now that I'm reading this and having this conversation, see, we're always going to be working to be protective of the environment and human health.
No, it's specifically narrowing the concept of producer responsibility to what is our specific purview,
Okay.
our interest in producer responsibility.
Okay.
It's
Yes.
Okay. That will be, we'll work to
the
capture that.
15th lobbyist that walks in that day and say, I want to protect the environment. 14 for you, all are industry people who are saying, you're going to kill my industry. I'm going to take our businesses out of your towns. And if the local government says, what's the why? Because these folks can't afford it.
Yeah.
We can't
Yeah.
do it. So that's the why. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that is very helpful. Thank you. Okay. Are you ready? Shall I pass the baton?
Right. All right, so as we dive into the state legislative agenda, I just want to remind everyone about the three key components of this document. The first is our guiding principles, and those guide the evaluation and review of legislative proposals. The next is our legislative priorities, and these are the primary focus for the legislative session and really take up the lion's share of the GR team's work. And the last is our service-specific guiding principles. Those principles guide the review proposals specific to county services and departments. Moving to the next slide here, we're going to start with our guiding principles. We've actually decided that we're not recommending any changes to these from the 2024 legislative agenda. These principles have served us very well, and we believe they will continue to be effective guides as we analyze the value of various proposals in the 25 session. I wasn't planning to read through all of these, but do you all want me to pause? Do anybody have comments on the guiding principles?
Really, what's important is that we're thumbs up as proposed.
Okay. Good. Thank you. Great. So then shifting gears to our legislative priorities. The first priority here is to secure stabilized and sustainable funding for services that the state requires the county to provide. So that should sound familiar from our previous legislative agenda. We did add a few sub-bullets here that are a bit more reflective of the issues we see coming in the 25 session. So the first, modernize the funding formula for county community corrections agencies to ensure state funding based on supervision levels. The next one is to boost funding for justice reinvestment grants to ensure continuing service levels for community corrections programs. The next is to strengthen funding for county assessment and taxation operations. We also added an increase in funding for the county law library. And of course, this last one is a catch-all, include funding with any new state mandated service or program that the county will be required to provide.
I would like to suggest a change here.
Sure.
I think we need to continue to underscore that there are existing state mandated services or programs that we are required to provide. And we do need them to look at funding those. So it could be include funding with any existing or new state mandated service or program that the county is or will be required to provide.
Yeah, good catch. I think that's worth adding.
So how did the county law library, which is a fairly small number, how did that get slid into here?
It's from a couple of years ago.
It's a good.
Well, I know that. I mean, I know we're having trouble funding that.
still
but
haven't.
I mean, so it just seems like we're kind of at the 20,000 foot level, and then we dropped way down to the law library. So
Yeah, so I'll just mention that my understanding is that the budget for the county law library, they've had some reserve funds to draw on. So it hasn't been, I mean, it's certainly been urgent, but it hasn't been as urgent finding additional funding for the county law library. But now those reserve funds are tapped. So if we don't find a way to fill that hole, then that's going to come out of other services, or simply those services will have to be cut.
So it
So,
was on the
yeah.
list before.
Yeah,
What-
I know it was. I
okay.
just, again, it seems.
Now it's risen to the
it's a
occasion
little
that,
number. It's a little number when we're talking about big numbers and.
yeah,
so
but
I-
it's going to be on the table for,
I agree. Okay. I don't have a problem with that. I just thought that was interesting.
Thanks, Commissioner. Any other comments or questions on this slide?
so a thumbs up.
Great. Oh,
I'll jump in here. So per board feedback and department feedback, we just brought in language here to be more inclusive towards being applicable to all of the county's workforce needs. That's the simple update on this slide. We anticipate workforce incentives are going to be a big conversation before the legislature this session.
yeah, so this next slide is another one that should sound familiar. Support funding to initiate the planning process for replacing the county's 100-year-old courthouse, which is needed to maintain the public safety system serving our growing community. We have some sub-bullets here to reflect the need for more judicial services, more courtroom capacity as well.
I think we need to be clear. We have the local match. So
Should put that
we
language.
need, yep,
Okay.
We just need them to match our match.
yep. We've participated in the process for 2 biennial cycles today.
Our turn.
Yep,
Great. So support matching funds.
are available.
Yeah, right. Okay. That's good. Any other comments? All right, we'll move on.
Commissioners, I would like to bring forth a new proposal. This has to do with maintaining affordable housing, which is a top priority for Washington County and will continue through preservation and acquisition of affordable housing buildings. In the next 5 years, it's projected that Washington County anticipates the expiration of 6 affordable housing buildings, totaling 581 units. 3 of these buildings are owned by for-profit companies. We anticipate that the county will be able to acquire and preserve affordability for only a fraction of these buildings and will absolutely need state funding to do so. Acquisition and preservation of affordable housing units will remain the county's priority. However, we must begin planning to support residents whose buildings will go through full affordability expiration. To accomplish this goal, we must secure state funding to support residents with relocation costs or budget for rent increases as units expire. To do so, staff has proposed that we develop a dedicated legislative funding source to support residents whose buildings will go through full affordability expiration and also continue the crucial work of preserving current affordable housing units to support the Washington County population as housing needs grow. I will be clear, I know that this is not a light lift. However, it is very, very urgent and something that our partners throughout the state will also be experiencing exponentially. So I'll pause for comment.
I think this board would just benefit from, I know I've kept the list that Director Calavar sent us years ago. And I think that it would benefit this board to have that list resent to us, current status.
No, go ahead, Roy.
My comment is we don't want to experience what we experienced with the Tiger site. And we were lucky to get the funding. In regard to the dedicated, some funding source. If, again, I'm not in the legislature, but I would say everybody's asking for everything. We have limited funds. Does that include bonding? Because to me, if they would look at a bonding program, I know it'd be huge statewide, but it's a big state. They may be able then to handle the debt service on that. Because this could be a catastrophe. It really will be coming up. But I didn't know what you mean by a legislative funding source. Are you open to everything, or should we more specifically call out, or maybe some kind of bonding program where the state would participate?
But before she answers that, was I correct in understanding that the first bullet you were really trying to get at, if these units end their affordability period, that 1 year notification, that one was really aimed at helping the residents with the relocation and new home costs. Whereas the second one was dealing with having the funding perhaps through a state bonding program or whatever for the preservation.
Thank you for that clarification, Chair. And the question, Commissioner Rogers, that's exactly right. So we would be exploring two supportive funding sources. The first being to support residents as they need rent support or transition to other units.
So that's assuming some go to market.
Correct.
Yeah, everything is on the table.
Yeah,
Yes.
but it still seems like if we were separated out, because that is a good point. There are two different issues. And if I were, again, in the legislature, I would say, what hat am I going to use? And what source am I going to use? I don't have a lot of money, but I could bond because that would make some sense. So then on the first one, if I didn't have to have all these expirations where the rent would go to market and I'm trying to backfill that rent, if I could bond it and buy it, which I like inventory because that's perpetuity. That makes a lot of sense. But
So I think what this is highlighting is need a few more words on each of these. And also, it's also highlighting that, yes, we rely upon the financial imagination of state legislators working in this domain in the appropriate committee, as well as in Ways and Means, and their ultimate direction to the departments.
Thank you for that, Chair Harrington. And I will say that I will work with our subject matter experts, and we look forward to bringing this back to you in September with more details and plan of action if the board agrees to that path.
Terrific.
Wonderful. We'll go to the next slide. Something else that I think is wonderful for your consideration. So this legislative proposal pertains to consent-based annexations of special service districts in which all landowners have signed a petition requesting to be annexed. And in addition, no less than 50% of registered electors in the territory also sign a petition requesting to be annexed. The changes proposed by staff and legal counsel would reduce the administrative burden on consent-based annexations by reducing the time and cost for the county and eliminate the required public hearing by the county board, since participants have really consented into this special service district annexation.
Think PHPRD, Clean Water Services, Metro has to deal with this as well. We go through all these steps, takes time and energy for staff to develop the legislation, to comply with the state law. It would just be more efficient. I think it's important to try. We've
100% owners, is that what you're saying?
That's correct, Commissioner Rogers, in addition to no less than 50% of registered voters in the territory.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. We'll look at it and bring it back to you in September.
There's more.
All right, so a couple updates from the HHS front. So 2 new items here and then 3 modifications. The first item is one that the board just received a briefing on from me like a week ago, which is to codify and update the funding formula to properly account for county needs. This is in relation to deflection and the Measure 110 funding formula. In addition to that, we have another new item at the bottom here: support legislation that improves access to care by expanding into.
This is a principle. I think that line item needs a little more explanation.
Happy to do that, Chair. I'll take care of that. Thank you for that feedback. The other new item on here is support legislation that improves access to care by expanding integrated health, mental health, and substance use disorder entry points available through housing and public safety. This has a direct tie in with our work on deflection. And then in terms of the other modifications listed on the slide, improve health and well-being across the lifespan continuum, including children, families, and older adults. The reason why we've had specific callouts here is that we know that there are proposals currently circulating from both legislators as well as the governor's office within this realm, as well as OHA. We're modifying things in relation to data collection and modernizing data infrastructure because some of the work that the state requires us to do creates underfunded mandates or unfunded mandates. So we just want to ensure that there's more adequate state support for doing that work, aka funding. And that is that slide. Are there any questions or comments?
On the one that's modify, the first one that's modify,
Yes.
I'm concerned that they'll improve / expand, but we won't get any further funding. On the second modify, I'm relying upon their funds from public health modernization to help support that work. So I think I'm concerned about, oh, you're applying the very first bullet to all the ones that
Yeah.
follow.
Yeah.
Okay. As long as that's clear to the reader, I'm with you.
We'll make that clear in the packet.
Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
that's a good point, because you put a dot in front of that, it just looks like it's a
Sure.
line. So yeah,
Good to hear that. Thank you for that, Chair.
Okay. Moving to the Clean Water Services proposed state legislative guiding principle. This is unchanged from 2024. So this one has been fairly long-standing for us, and we had a very intentional conversation with our team to see if there were any modifications that they could identify, and they did not have any. So unless there is feedback.
Sign of a great principle
It must be, yes.
and stable focus of the agency.
Okay, so moving into our proposed state legislative priorities for 2025. Many of these are similar in nature. Again, we've made some modifications just to be a bit more specific in certain areas. Advocating for statewide and project-specific investments in water-related infrastructure. Again, we were intentional last year to make sure that we're advocating for water quality projects and investments. So that core work that we do in maintaining and improving our existing systems, but also the capacity building piece to support community growth. The only change that was made is to specifically call out including housing production. We're actually very grateful and encouraged to see the legislature has connected the dots that water infrastructure is necessary in order to have housing production. And so we're just specifically calling that out in this priority. The second item here, it is going to be a long legislative session. Therefore, the DEQ budget is going to be something that we are working very closely on to make sure that the water quality budget is adequately funded so they can do a good job, which makes a world of difference for us to be able to do our jobs. The third item was in the 2024 state priority as well around water reuse. And again, we had some legislation that was passed in 2023 through the drought package that the legislature passed that required DEQ to do the regulatory administrative work for updating their regulatory framework for reuse, which has just not been an item that they've updated for a very long time. So they are doing that work. They had a pretty slow hiring process that fell through with the first round. And so they had to reopen that. So we're going to need to advocate for ongoing resource to continue those positions and then move into advocating for dollars to help implement projects as opposed to just that regulatory piece and that update that's so critical. And then the last item on there, and then there's another slide with some additional items, but is to promote resource recovery. This is the new item that we have on the state legislative agenda for 25. So this one's the only new one. The others are modified. But we do see there's some conversations that have been happening with the state, an interest in resource recovery, including energy generation. And then, of course, reuse, water reuse does fit within that, but nutrient production, nutrient recovery as well.
I think in seeing this slide as well as the next one, I am thumbs up on the priorities and the way you've articulated them. But I'd like to make sure that the document of these priorities includes a statement that all of these priorities are in service to the people, well, or are there because of the people who make up our service community. And what struck me about wanting to include that is for many state legislators, when they think about the Oregon Department of Environmental Quality, which is listed here twice, they think about just agency administration and particularly on industry. And it's like, wait a minute, it's there to protect the people who make up our community, the people in the river. And so I want to make sure that in the enumeration of these priorities, that's the banner, the why banner.
I thank you, Chair. I appreciate that. And we had the Legislative Water Caucus, as you know, come to visit us, and they wanted to talk about innovation, which is great. And we love highlighting our innovation. We can't be innovative if DEQ is not well resourced and well staffed. So we appreciate that. Okay, moving on to the second slide of priorities. Advocating for investments for additional research around emerging contaminants and supporting policies to promote source identification and reduction, pollution prevention, and outreach. This is largely the same from 2024. The only addition here is that we, again, are specifically calling out the source reduction and pollution prevention, as well as the outreach piece to make sure that we're working on education to the public. The next item, supporting opportunities for additional state investments for water infrastructure readiness for industrial and commercial expansion opportunities, is unchanged from 2024. So that one is just remaining in case there are discussions about infrastructure investments that may need to be made in order to continue down that path of looking at potential expansion opportunities. Preserving local infrastructure financing tools for water infrastructure. So we hope there's not any significant legislation that would limit our ability to assess SDCs, system development charges, but that would be captured under this. Supporting efforts to enhance water utility responsiveness, efficiency, and resiliency. That is unchanged. That includes things like cybersecurity, as well as addressing invasive species, emerald ash borer being one. So all kinds of things that we are encountering as emerging that we need to be able to be responsive to. And then finally, supporting funding opportunities and efficiencies and policies to promote housing production while ensuring water quality and protecting public health. So again, we're finding ourselves in a lot more conversations around housing production. At the same time, we are seeing and doing having some internal conversations around efficiencies that may actually help, where we can see some win-wins across the state that support both of those desired outcomes.
Thumbs up.
Right. Moving on to topics.
So this slide is focused on some of the hot topics that we expect will come up in the 2025 legislative session. The first one here is related to the Habitat Conservation Plan and its financial impacts on counties. As you all are aware, the HCP, as they call it, is projected to have a significant impact on timber revenue that many counties rely on. Commissioner Willie has been deeply involved in collaborative efforts with AOC and the governor's office to develop a legislative solution to make counties whole. And we expect this will be a hot topic in 2025. The next one here is the idea of individual assistance grants for recovery from natural disasters. There's some interest in creating a state program that sort of mirrors a federal program that offers individual assistance grants to people who are affected by natural disasters. And we expect that legislation will resurface this year with that goal in mind. The next one here is behavioral health and substance use disorder. Of course, we're not, after this last session, we still have a lot to talk about there. And the first thing that I want to call out is the idea of using dollars from the jail-based medication for opioid use disorder grant program in our facilities like our community corrections facility. The way that bill was originally written, it doesn't allow us to use those funds in our community correction center, which is a place we really think that they could be very effective. So we're pursuing a minor tweak there. And also, when it comes to civil commitment, there are legislators and stakeholders working on policy improvements to our civil commitment and community restoration processes, which are really critical to ensuring that individuals gain the ability to aid and assist in their own defense in the criminal justice system. So that issue is going to resurface as well in the 2025 session. Do you want to?
Yeah, and I'll,
Before you move on,
Sure.
I believe you should think about including the word technical, because I don't believe the legislature had any intent to exclude the 4 community correction centers that operate in the state, which meets the banner of jail capacity. So it's different than just saying tweak, but rather is more of a technical correction.
Thank you. Happy to add that.
we also anticipate further discussions happening about the funding formula for behavioral health resource networks and deflection programs. The quote by the chair was very well received across the Tri-County region. Both county staff and also government relations teams are working together to come up with a more adequate solution for the Tri-County area.
Transportation.
A little thing that's happening this coming legislative session, but I'm just going to touch on housing and the transportation package more broadly, because we will certainly be getting into the granular in the future. But we absolutely expect a continuation of the governor's work to expand affordable housing, and therefore need to ensure that there are funding sources to maintain and expand affordable housing and support the work the LUT and other aspects of the county will need to do to accomplish those goals. Of course, the transportation package, we are dedicated to providing and maintaining an ongoing reliable revenue streams for our multimodal regional transportation system. So the conversations there will be robust and ongoing.
If I could just go back up to the top one, I really appreciate the fact that you've included that to our hot topics, but it probably needs to be expanded just a tad, because it's about the state school fund. It's not about forestry revenues necessarily, but we're going to be focused on the state school fund. So I know you probably knew that, and it is kind of underneath this topical guideline, but I want to make sure that's included. Sure. Tracking that, because we all know that also that they're looking at revamping the formula for the state school fund, which is going to have an impact on this as well. So, okay.
Thanks for the feedback.
So before we move to next steps, I would like to comment that back on the federal agenda, I was wondering why we haven't highlighted the need for more help in dealing with the drug crisis. We talk about affordable housing at that level, but fentanyl, heroin, methamphetamine, cocaine, those are still big and growing problems. And I think we need to ask for help. And the only way for us to do that is to put it on the list.
All the things that we legalized, but
and recriminalized. Dealing's never been not criminalized.
There's also the international aspect of the problem. So I think it's important to have it there.
Mm-hmm.
And then still back on federal, we need help nationally, not just here in Washington County, not just here in Oregon, but with the behavioral health workforce. Yes, we have Oregon specific problems that need to be addressed. Absolutely. That's why we've got it on our state ledge agenda. But I think we need to think about evangelizing the need with our congressional reps. That's all.
Point well taken, Chair. We'll work to address that in the federal agenda.
And then lastly, I'm not sure where to do this, which is why I just left it at the end. There are two things that I think about, three actually, when I look at my detailed notes here. I think we need to be brave and articulate to the Washington County caucus that we need them to fund state agencies to do foundational work. You know, in meeting with the DLCD director this week, there's some foundational work that they need to do to modernize things, move away from paper, for example. And they need the funding to do that. So in some ways, they're stealing from Peter to pay Paul, just like we have done for decades, but they're down to the bone just like we are. So, and our work with them relies upon that information. So I think we need to advocate. This is not so much our priorities necessarily, but advocacy that we can do to support. The other is, I'm grateful that Clackamas County Chair Tootie Smith engraved this on my forehead 3 years ago. And so every year when we talk about legislative priorities, I bring it up. No more unfunded mandates. We say that really politely. So moving from the polite to the direct, no more unfunded mandates. Thank you very much. So board?
Unfunded or partially funded.
There you go. Bingo. I like that even better. Well, that was my my third budget, my third bullet item. Fund existing ones. So, but it's more crisp. No more funded, no more underfunded. So that's it from me. Next steps?
Thank you for that great feedback, Chair. Next steps, we want to just provide a snapshot of the calendar and what we're going to be looking at. I'm not going to call out every item, but August is very important for us. We're going to revise the proposed agenda and be engaging with legislators on these potential legislative concepts, and just continuing these important conversations to build the required coalitions. In September, we have a few things itemized, but we are looking forward to legislative days on the 23rd to the 25th. We're also going to be doing a work session with the county and Clean Water Services to draft the agenda, and flagging that the bill request deadline is at the end of September, as we've discussed. I'd like to take the opportunity right now to add something else to the possible schedule in September. Your government relations team has been analyzing the capital improvement plan and exploring a state funding request in addition to the courthouse. While we are in the early stages of our analysis and considering what is possible based on the historic Christmas tree bills, we want to socialize this concept with you for your consideration. We plan to continue engaging with subject matter experts and work off of your adopted capital improvement plan to bring back a recommendation to you in September of what a proposed project could look like. But I will speak for the team that we certainly want to be thoughtful and also aggressive in our funding asks for the county and not leave any money on the table.
Cities do it all the time. So I think it's something for us to consider. Thank you for the idea.
Thank you, Chair. And then the last slide is just the interim calendar, which we love to include just for your ongoing reference. Again, just highlighting some of those important dates that we'll be working towards and also bringing information back to you.
So this year they don't have ledge days that conflict with the AOC conference. Great.
I believe that's a very correct and positive change.
Yeah, cool. Terrific.
Are there any questions that we can answer, commissioners?
Good job, team. Go team, go.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All righty. We have one more topic, board and leadership communication and formal agenda discussion. First, why don't we check in on the multiple letters? The first, we have a urban growth report comment letter that has been proposed to us. I assume we've all had the opportunity to review these letters. Are you thumbs up in supporting the city of Sherwood expansion and the UGR and moving forward? Yep, okay, great. The Hillsborough TGM grant item on Cornell Road. Great. And King City is also applying for a TGM grant with regard to the West Side Trail. Okie dokie. Great. Now, actually, why don't we do leadership communication first? Yes, Ms.
Chair, before you move on to leadership communication, I do want to mention there is one letter that was not included in your packet that I just received in the last hour. And that is a letter recognizing the third annual report on Washington County's use of ARPA funds. When we submit the report, we need a letter from the board. Ms. McKibben is grabbing a hard copy of that letter.
Okay,
Since you haven't had time to review it,
give us the high points.
okay, the high points is you're accepting the letter and the county's distribution of ARPA funds. This is the pro forma report, and so we just need a signature.
We're gonna see a draft.
You're gonna see a draft and you can express concerns.
Okay.
Oh, and there she is like clockwork.
Didn't we also have one from,
CDBG.
yeah, CDB?
That's on the list.
It's in here.
Where?
It's the last one.
Pam's favorite topic.
Oh, I didn't. Whatever.
You are correct, Madam Chair. You didn't miss that one. Thumbs up for the folks.
And that's on the home.
I know, I read it.
You've already read it. It's really, they're in budget right now at the federal level, and this is our opportunity to influence consideration.
Thumbs up.
Me too. Yep.
And Commissioner Rogers, there's your copy. This is the one that Ms. Angie was just referring to. We approved the framework. It's noting that, highlighting the status of all of our different areas and making sure that we provide the appropriate submittal.
Yeah, if you're good with it, yeah, you bet.
I will get this information to the clerk to be posted in the packet, so it's publicly available.
Yeah. Terrific. Okay, leadership communication. Which of you would like to start first?
I'll go first, Chair Harrington, Board
you.
of Commissioners. I have a number of legal updates that I'm going to share with you in our next scheduled time. So I'm just going to use this time to briefly let you know that I will be on vacation the remainder of this week. Deputy County Counsel Jason Bush will be acting for the remainder of the week. He is on site for during normal business hours, and I did share his cell phone with you all should you need him. I will be getting some nature therapy, so don't think that I will be have reliable connection or cell
Terrific.
service.
Go on vacation and leave your work phone behind.
Forest bathing approved.
Yes, yes. So looking forward to getting away with my family. I also wanted to just take a moment to let you know that next week, since we won't be together next week in this forum, that several of the county council will be attending the Oregon Association of County Council Conference at Shalahan. As in years past, Washington County has been tapped to do a lot of the presenting and teaching to our peers. This continues to be a trend. So I just want to thank County Council, our our team for taking that on. Rob Bovet and Adriana Ortega will both be presenting. And also just want to remind you that Kim Stewart also taught a couple of weeks ago at the Oregon Law Enforcement Records Association annual conference. So we continue to be out there representing Washington County well. Oh, and I might get on top of Commissioner Willie here, but the fair starts Friday. So hopefully everyone gets a chance to get out there.
Good afternoon. So first, I would like to start out with some sad news to pass along relative to the recent heat event. Washington County is now at 4 deaths that our medical examiner's office suspects were related to the recent heat wave. The youngest person who passed was 73, and the oldest person was 87. All of these deaths occurred within urbanized areas of Washington County. The medical examiner was able to determine that 3 of the 4 individuals had no air conditioning within their homes. The fatalities that were suspected to be caused by the heat just underscore the need for each of us to be aware of unique needs that our neighbors have during significant weather events such as we've experienced. I'll repeat what I said last week about how our multi-agency response to the heat wave over the 4th of July deserves credit for mitigating the impact of this extreme weather event, yet I don't want to underscore the loss our community and those families have felt.
Can I ask a question? And I am in no way trying to find out the particulars of these individuals. Rather, I'm trying to identify if their place of residence was public housing, affordable housing, private market rate housing, whether it's apartments or standalone houses. So my reason, I'm wondering if we could, if staff could have the benefit of that knowledge so that staff can look at, are there additional outreach efforts we should be making to promote the Medicaid supported air conditioning units or other senior programs for outreach?
Some of that information we don't have fully yet, so I will take that as an action item to follow up with your board on. I know last year your board had expressed the desire and direction to staff to help push out that availability for services. I will say just last week reported to your board, we have seen an increase in our overnight cooling shelters, so that is good. It doesn't speak to the sad news I just shared, but we need to keep pushing out that information to our community, both on that short-term relief valve of an overnight cooling shelter, but also additional means of safety for our community. So looking ahead, the weather forecast calls for continued hot and dry weather, including today's predicted high temperature of 97 here in Hillsborough. Thankfully, temperatures are expected to cool off during the evenings. We're also being vigilant about potential fire-prone weather in the days ahead. As if to underscore this point, the National Weather Service just issued a red flag warning earlier this afternoon due to the low humidity and chance for gusting winds and thunderstorms tonight. You will see an update from our amazing emergency manager, John Wheeler, and the emergency management team, of course, are paying attention to the conditions.
This reminds me of, the heat wave of last week plus high temperatures now and what Ms. Angie just shared. Back in the summer of 2020, we had that heat dome, and then we had a heat wave in every single month, July, August, September, one or more. So it feels like that instance all over again, that really bad instance all over again. And we're trending that way.
Yes. So now moving on to libraries. I will say I was texting with my daughter as we were in this meeting, who was wondering how many books she could check out on her library visit to the Beaverton Library. So thank you to the Cooperative Library Service to being there for me as a working parent. But getting back to county business, as you know, WCCLS, under your board's direction and leadership, is leading a funding and governance evaluation process with our city and nonprofit partners. As part of this process, there is a broad community survey effort that will be starting tomorrow. The goal of the survey is to help inform the analysis of the current state of the cooperative and to understand what residents value about library services, what potential barriers there are to accessing services, with a special emphasis on trying to reach historically underserved communities and residents who don't know how to use the library now. WCCLS is mailing a postcard to every residence in the county, inviting community members to take the survey, which is available in English, Spanish, Vietnamese, and Chinese. They will also be sharing the survey opportunity on their website via WCCLS email newsletter, which reaches 195,000 subscribers, and social media. WCCLS staff are partnering with libraries to attend community events across the county and get the word out, and libraries are also sharing this message. So we're looking for a broad reach and extensive survey. This community input will be reflected in the current state assessment that staff will be presenting to your board at your scheduled September 13th work session. The feedback will also be considered as Marina and Company, who is the consultant we're working with, puts together the recommendations for the future state of the cooperative. So please encourage community members to take this survey.
Could we get a copy of the graphics for the postcard?
Yes, we will get that out to you.
That'd be great.
So
And I'm hoping staff will also, could be as late as September with the work session, bring the full board one set of the bookworm stickers for us to distribute amongst the 5 of us.
Okay.
We'll have
Staff can do that.
on which is your favorite library.
So also on upcoming engagement opportunities, as you are aware, I previously shared with your board that Explore Tualatin Valley has granted $1 million to the build out of Scoggins Valley Park, Hague Lake Campground. So once again, special thanks to that partnership in place. The Parks team currently has 2 community engagement opportunities in alignment with the requirement of our Metro funds to provide input on the capital projects, the Tualatin River Access Facilities, which is occurring on July 18th from 6 to 8 p.m. at the Camp C Pavilion, and one on August 3rd, 4 to 7 in the same location.
Would you like us to sign on to your letter of thanks to the ETV board for that decision?
That would be great if your board would be willing to do that. I don't have a copy of that in front of me, so it would be a general thank you letter, and I would provide you, of course, the courtesy copy of that.
That's great.
Yep. Okay. Also, a new staff appointment. It is my pleasure to announce that Luke Ross has accepted our offer to be the new Chief Information Officer. You have previously met Luke as he's serving as our interim. Luke has been with Washington County for 20 years and has extensive knowledge of our systems. Each day he brings optimism, enthusiasm to the work, and really embraces that One Washington County spirit in service delivery of IT services. I really look forward to his leadership and also looking at technology through an innovation lens as we move forward as a One Washington County team. And with that, that concludes my update. Thank you.
Awesome. Who's next?
Rumor that Philip had to promise him lunch every week for the rest of his career. That's not true.
Peanut butter sandwiches.
Once a month. Oh, okay.
Elizabeth, go ahead.
All right. Thank you so much, Chair Harrington and members of the Clean Water Services Board of Directors. I'll run through 4 quick updates. First is last week we had our Clean Water Advisory Commission meet out at Fernhill. They braved the heat and got a wonderful education from Jared Kinnear and Baumgartner about the rigorous regulatory and scientific effort that took to kind of bring Fernhill to fruition. It was also a great opportunity to dovetail that information into the learnings that came from Fernhill helped to inform the project that Clean Water Services supported our Laotian partners with. So that the natural system, natural filtration at Fernhill helped to inspire an affordable, administrable way that folks across the globe can actually help to improve their water quality. So that was shared with CWAC last week. Going to this morning, we had a press conference with Congresswoman Bonamici, as well as the chair, mayors of Forest Grove and Cornelius, and Andy Hogan, a member of our Clean Water Advisory Commission, to celebrate nearly, or actually over $950,000 from the federal government. So a huge thanks to our federal delegation for their support, and especially Congresswoman Bonamici. This funding is going toward the Western Washington County Inflow and Infiltration Rehabilitation Project. And it was a beautiful day in the shade. If you stepped out in the sun, it was a little hot, but it was great to have everyone out and to celebrate this partnership. Moving on, this Friday, we have board learning. So we're excited to welcome the board into our newest building. We'll be talking about workforce, system development, charge, financing tools, governance and financial reporting, and give you a tour of the new space. Keep in mind, we're not moved in yet. So we'll be working through some of the new elements. Last but not least, next week is a big week for water. So here in Oregon, we have the AQUA Annual Conference, Oregon Association of Clean Water Associations. They'll be convening in Redmond. But the more exciting news is about NACWA, the National Association of Clean Water Agencies, which will be convening in Buffalo, New York. And our very own Diane Taniguchi-Dennis will take the reins as the incoming president. So that will be happening next week. We're very excited and proud of Diane's leadership. And yeah, that's all the news that's fit to print from CWS.
And that's where Commissioner Rogers and I will be. So
Yeah.
as you hear about thunderstorms moving across New York State, you see that on the national news, wave at us.
We'll be okay.
Okay, before we move to board communication, any questions on today's formal agenda for this evening meeting? No. Okay.
And Chair Aaron, Ms. Doyle will be handing out the updated Metro letter, which reflects the changes that you had made. If you turn to the back, the second page, that's where the most substantial changes were made in the last paragraph or second to last.
We added a second to last paragraph with the substantial changes and added the word council in that second bullet point in the list of 6.
Wait, can you say that again?
We added the word council
Council?
after Metro, and then on the second page, the second to last paragraph is the new statement of what the Board of Commissioners plans to do. So your next steps.
The Washington County Board of Commissioners has committed to take steps to further understand the recommendations that the Metro Council will be providing to their staff. This work will include understanding the direction the Metro Council provides staff for the continuing work, working with the county staff to have a deeper understanding of the potential impacts of recommendations, and determine if we can find capacity as a board and for our staff to any next steps proposed to address Metro Council's direction. I think it's true to our direction. While commissioners are continuing to read that, why don't we move to board communication? Who would like to go first? 1, 2, 3, I'll go first. TCPB, I had a TCPB meeting last week. We covered the second part of employee recruitment and retention for the COO recommendation on housing. Liam Frost and Patricia Rojas gave the overview and said that they will be having one-on-ones directly with TCPB members. So there's no group discussion in order for members to ask questions or get further information on the topic. To me, that was interesting. No group learnings to be shared there. I met, as I mentioned, with the DLCD Director Bateman. Thank you for staff for joining in that. As I mentioned on state ledge work, DLCD needs our help. And we thanked DLCD for their help on county work as well as for the cities, which we need both for climate friendly and equitable communities, for the housing needs analysis and the housing production strategy. Our staff is maxed out. The consultants that our staff needs to hire in order to do that work are also maxed out and unavailable to do the work that we need to do in order to meet the state deadlines. Boy, have we got a crisis here, folks, compared to meeting the requirements, as well as the state legislature's goals and those of the governor. We're in a world of hurt, big time. Had the chairs and mayors meeting yesterday. Thanks to Aaron Calvert, Joe, and Marnie Kyle for the overview of the latest and greatest on deflection. They're doing a great job to get to the September 1st deployment. On Wednesday, Danny and I are meeting with the CCI chair with regard to questions he has on our board direction through the letter, which was distributed to all the leaders. Thursday, we have a meeting with Congresswoman Salinas. She's wanting to learn about our work on the ongoing fentanyl crisis, as well as with deflection as well. As mentioned, I'll be out next week at NACWA for CWS Business. And the following week on family vacation, but I do have a couple of county meetings going on over those next couple of weeks, Tri-County Chairs meeting, jail and community corrections capacity meeting. So I will have my personal cell phone on through 6 p.m. Eastern time, which is, 9 p.m. Eastern time, which is 6 p.m. Pacific time. So while I'm on vacation, except for when I'm on these meetings for work, I won't be checking my county cell phone. So that's why it's important. You have my personal cell phone to tell me to either call you or look at my texts or listen to voicemail. I want to give you a heads up that the dates that are proposed for the county council recruitment and our board role conflict with the dates of the November roundtable and the CWS learning review. So our staff is working, the two staffs are working on that problem. Lastly, sorry, I had so much. I sent an email out to your staff assistants asking for date time slots to help narrow down when we could satisfy the request from the chair of WCCC with the mayors to meet regarding MISTIP and county budgets. I had asked them, our staff, to get me that information by noon yesterday. I don't have that information yet in order to follow up with you. So I'll have to keep working on it and we'll come back to it August 6th. Okay, that's it for me. Any questions? Great. Who's next? Oh, how far off was I? I was over, wasn't I?
Not by much.
Okay, thanks so much for speed listening.
I can go next. Last week after our board meeting, I attended the CPO1 meeting that was online. It's a good meeting. And given all the discussion that we had that morning, it was very positive, and they were looking at how they can function appropriately under public meeting laws and all the different pieces. I was really pleased with that interaction. On Wednesday, I had a meeting with Andrew McGough at WSI, along with Zucker and Pablo regarding WSI's intent in relationship to workforce development in behavioral health. So we were just kind of syncing up and saying, you know, here's what our needs are. What are you doing? And I think it was a positive touch point. On Thursday, I had an MPAC coordinating committee meeting, and our next MPAC meeting is July 24th. So this is the last opportunity for me to tell you what's going to be on the agenda. So I thought I'd mention that we are going to be again reviewing the 2024 draft urban growth boundary report. And that's what we put the letter forward in. And also we're getting an update on the system facilities plan for WPES. And so
That's solid parks and solid waste.
thank you very much.
Properties, it's not parks.
WPES is
Yeah.
not what they refer to it as.
Yeah.
But I wanted to let you know, because also in preparation for that, I'm going to be having our MPAC sync up meeting for the Washington County participants. We will not be getting an update from the COO on any SHS related issues. She will be out of the office, I believe. So
Yeah, she's out for
So-
2 weeks.
so
So on the PES,
WPES, yeah.
what I think we're really interested in learning is, so what is the council direction on moving forward with the Cornelius Transfer Station that they did all that planning and community engagement for? Boy, they really got us excited.
And then bought industrial land that Cornelius needs to be developed.
I will ask the question.
Yeah,
Thank you. So part of my goal here is to make sure, as always, that I'm informing you about the agenda so that you know. The other, we had a PAB meeting on last week that went very well. I also had a meeting yesterday with Joe Simich, and this, first of all, let me take a step back and tell you that Commissioner-elect Vince Jones Dixon asked if Vince Jones Dixon is going to be
Multnomah County.
Multnomah County he'll be replacing Lori Stegman. And so
It's
Ken-
District 1, I
is it
think.
District 1?
East
He asked
County.
me if I would meet with an individual whose name is Matt McNair, and Matt McNair is representing a software product that may be useful for us in relationship to deflection. So it was a get to know you meeting, and that I talked with Aaron Calvert, and Joe attended that meeting with me. He's interested. It looks like it might have promise, but it's, who knows? We'll see. But I just wanted to let you know that meeting occurred.
Back on the PAB,
Yes.
who's your alternate? I haven't been getting information.
Okay. I'm looking at Shannon in the room, so I'll make sure that happens.
It means I've missed all the research leading up to the new comp plan.
Conference, okay, yes. We'll make sure that we have that piece together for the chair.
You do the planned work session on August 20th for your board as well on the comp plan.
Yeah, I'm worried that I'm only gonna have a week.
We'll prepare that.
Thank you.
So for the record, what we're going to be doing is preparing information on the comp plan prior to the August 20th work session for my alternate. Okay, and then let's see. And this Friday, I'm going to be attending the CWS meeting with everybody else and looking forward to it.
A lot going on.
Yeah.
I can't believe we're looking at September. So who's next?
Nafisa.
I say we break the gender and let the
At least.
boys go first.
Yeah, see, there you go, 2-1. Give up your report.
You're between me and a break.
I respect you both, so I'll go next.
Seniors.
I didn't say that, just for the record. TV highway, last week, I'll just give you a quick update. TV highway was last week. They had a great meeting. The steering committee, one of the things that came out of it, the steering committee expressed unanimous support for the $300 million CIG eligible project concept. We felt that it would be better to leverage the federal funding opportunity to get the most improvement possible for the corridor, or in the corridor. The project team will now begin the work on developing the locally preferred alternative and equitable development strategy and funding strategy. Now, what that means is the LPA, the locally preferred alternative, will come before the steering committee later this year. And I'll keep updating the board. LUT and Metro staff have scheduled a work session briefing on this project for August 27th. And then the next committee update that I'd like to give you all is yesterday we had WCCC, the month of July meeting. One of the things, which was also a letter that we approved, that we expressed support on your behalf, was the Sherwood West Employment Area Assessment by Metro. It was a really good discussion. And then one of the other really interesting topic, obviously, is something that is relevant to everyone and to every agency. ODOT came to WCCC and ODOT staff gave a presentation about their issues with funding, operations, and maintenance. The discussion mostly centered around wanting to make sure cities and counties do not get left behind in funding discussions. And then the metaphor that was suggested was all boats need to rise together.
Back on the WCCC meeting, both the combination of the Metro COO presentation and that meeting, I've learned that the Metro Council passed a budget amendment in support of, or supporting cities' needs for, I don't have the budget note. Actually, what my ask is for staff to get us that budget note for the support that the council would like to put resources behind to support growth and infrastructure in cities. I think it's important that we have access, right, that we know more about it in support of our cities.
Yeah, definitely, Chair Harrington. We'll work with the staff to make sure we all get that. Thank you. And then this week, upcoming is JPAC. Meeting is this Thursday. There are action items on JPAC, but before I go into it, I do want to say, I'll wait. The action item is there are several MTIP amendments, including 3 ODOT projects to reflect funding updates for the Rose Quarter project and as part of ODOT's rebalancing of the STIP to address the funding shortfalls. There is a discussion and information item, which I'll probably just focus here. The RUFA next steps of RUFA is on the agenda for this Thursday. Last month, JPAC approved the RUFA program direction that we discussed at a previous meeting. The staff is now working on developing the new project bond and beginning the steps 2 allocation process. The candidate nomination process for the new project bond funds will begin July 26th. From our previous discussion, the large projects in Washington County do actually meet the RUFA program themes, which are the TV Highway BRT project and then the Southwest 185th Avenue Max Crossing project. There are any other projects that we're aware of, or I'm aware of, that you'll like the staff to look into it. So I am posing that question for you all, the board members, and I'll rephrase. Are there any other projects you're aware of that you'll like to look into, to have the staff, not me, the staff look into to consider as a candidate for the RUFA, besides the two projects I mentioned? And that's a question that I can send to the board so we can have a in writing, and then your staff can do due diligence. And the other discussion on the agenda, and I do want to give a kudos and gratitude to Chair Hanton. You're an ideal alternate. Thank you for sending that JPAC legislative priority document while I was away. Our staff, Aaron Doyle and Carly and Jessica Pels, have been working part of a regional staff group to develop the draft JPAC legislative priorities. They include short-term funding solutions to stabilize operations and maintenance, invest long-term sustainable funding, finish what we started by completing the House Bill 2017 projects, increase investment in safe urban arterial and main streets, increase state funding for transit capital and operations, increase resilience of our critical infrastructure like airports and bridges. Question for the board: are there any other principles or priorities I should mention on Thursday? And I do want to say thank you, Chair, and also Commissioner Rogers, for your feedback. I did get the email forwarded by Chair Hinton. So, any
No, it's
other?
great.
No.
Thank you. How is NACWA? I mean, how is NACO?
I was like, I did not go to, just so we are, NACO was great. It was great. It was a lot. It was really great. I personally, for a couple of years, first year I attended NACO was 2023, and I was new. I had a lot of appetite for learning, and that conference really hooked me. I learned a lot in terms of my role, my responsibilities, and also built a lot of relationship for people who've been doing this commission life for a long time in different jurisdictions throughout the United States. So I really do enjoy the NACO conference. This year was really great. It was really focused. I did not attend any water-related sessions, and I don't think there was any water-related, and Tanya is confirming my assumptions. I don't remember seeing it, but there were a lot of good topics. Obviously, I'm on the Transportation Committee, but this year I decided to mix it up, which I actually got in trouble with the Transportation Committees. They were like, "Where are you?" texting. But I did attend many different, but one of the things I switched it up was Community and Economic and Workforce Development Policy Steering Committee, which was an all-day thing, and that was really great. And then I attended different sessions, but I really appreciated. I will never forget that conference because myself and a bunch of other electeds were walking away from one session and heading to another session, and we got the news that former President Donald Trump was shot. And it was really scary, heartbreaking, and it's just very confusing at the same time. So I'll never forget that. And then there was thunders, rain for 5 minutes, no rain again, or sometimes so much rain that you're like, what is going on? If you ever go to Florida, note to myself, if I ever go to Florida, take umbrella with you. Because we're Oregonians, we're used to walking in the rain, but this was not a normal rain. It was heavy rain for
A sturdy
15
umbrella.
minutes.
A sturdy umbrella.
Okay.
That's
And then
right.
since Chair Hanson gave me the platform, one of the shocking things I experienced in Tampa, Florida, was roosters. There is a rooster ordinance that protects roosters. So we're walking around in the city, and there are roosters crossing the street with us, walking alongside with us. I could not believe it that I was like, I have to document, so I FaceTime my staff, Brenda, to document this. And luckily I was with other electeds from Oregon, throughout Oregon, that also was shocked, just like me. But roosters have a rights and they're protected in Tampa, Florida. With that, I end my.
Begs the question, so why did the rooster cross the road?
That was a chicken.
Oh, that's right.
The car, how did the car know to stop?
Okay, I'll go ahead. Can I transition from that? Yes,
Sure.
I've experienced
Thank you,
Florida
Chair.
rains and I would agree. It does rain. So last week, I've started my rotation of meeting with my 6 cities in District 4, just to bring them an update on what the county has been doing. So I visited the Bank City Council last week and gave them a quick report. She gave me 15 minutes and I took 18, so we were good. And that was that was at a work session. Then they convened their city council meeting where they went through the conversation of why their historic house was destroyed. So I skipped that part. On Wednesday, again, a rotation for the timber dollars and the conversation that we're having with that. I met with Hillsborough School Superintendent last week. Yesterday with Gaston. Upcoming is Banks and Forest Grove with Vernonia on the horizon. And then I have 8 more to go because I have discovered that all 13 of our school districts receive some smattering of money from a couple of different timber sources. So I'll be continuing that.
You might want to engage with your colleagues on meeting with school superintendents from our districts.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Like, I'm just gonna take care of it now.
So let's see, the fair, thank you very much, Courtney, for announcing the fair that is starting this Friday. So lots of good information, lots of good activities to go. I will be preparing breakfast with the fair board to the 4-H kids from July 25th to July 28th. So that's the last 4 days of the fair. And also just we have had for several years very stringent guidelines and rules as to how to mitigate the transmission of disease from animals to people. And we've kind of taken some heat from that over the last few years as to why we are so strict. Well, now the Oregon Department of Agriculture has issued emergency rules last week, basically indicating all the things that we've been doing. We had to make a few minor adjustments to our procedures, but for the most part, we were consistent in that emergency rules, and it kind of substantiated why we had been doing that. So kudos to Leah and her team out at the fairgrounds for being visionary in implementing those rules. So great for that. I also met last week with Laura Dexheimer, who is the founder of the North Plains Food Bank. I didn't even know they had one till I was out there a month or so ago. So I met with her. They operate on about $2,000 a month. They don't get any assistance from the Oregon Food Bank. So it's very difficult for them to continue to get food. So they live off of contributions and support. Right now, they have 175 seniors signed up and 290 families signed up. So they are doing a great job out there.
Families?
295, 290, 175 seniors. So they have the layout is really cool, and it's like shopping. So it's good. It's good. She's doing a great job.
What is the barrier keeping them from getting support through the Oregon Food Bank?
They have to apply, and the application process, I believe, is annually. And Oregon Food Bank only allows so many other food banks, and obviously they're at capacity, so they kind of have to wait in the queue to get the spot, and then they have to apply and get approved. So it's quite a process. A lot of demand for food bank activities, evidently. So like I said, I'll be having more conversations about forestry, dollars, all those kinds of things. I have a GPI board meeting tomorrow morning. Sheriff's Office cafeteria grand opening. We're gonna be attending that, so that'll be fun. Thursday, I have an AFSAC
Please
meeting.
pass on my condolences for that, for missing it. I have a personal obligation I need to take care of tomorrow morning.
Okay, so I get your muffin or whatever that, or.
Cheeseburger, come on. Tater tots.
Just want to
if
make
they have
sure
'em.
Pam doesn't get in front
I'm
of me
taking
on
the
that.
prize.
Yeah, see? And then, of course, all day, Friday is the Clean Water Services meeting. So Aaron, I will not be able to attend the PSCC meeting. So if you please pass on that. And I'm assuming you're not going to be there. either.
Nope.
Yeah.
Nope. Mr. Rogers, how about you? You're gonna get sick of me next week.
You did. Maybe it's the reverse. Pam, thank you for your contact with WSI. That was brought up by Andrew at our meeting last Friday morning, and it was predominantly just about the budget, which you probably know my style. I kept saying, what's the contingency plan? How's the finance committee going to deal with increase, decrease? And a big part of it was to say goodbye to Jim. So that was nice. Nafisa, one comment to you beyond what I've already gave to you. I always wonder what's happening at JPAC. The state starts having a set of funding issues, and they start asking for step changes. They start asking for other kinds of change. I don't know what you all are giving up. Because I mean, you only have a certain population of money. So if they're asking for changes, I don't know what's being given up. So I hope, I know you're doing a great job, but really watch them, because I mean, we could be suffering projects really quickly if they start trying to backfill. Have a WA meeting tomorrow night. I can't tell you the agenda because I just got the notice that it's on again. Elizabeth's been out on vacationing, and she sent a note, said, look forward to seeing everybody. The agenda's coming. So it's whatever it's going to be tomorrow night. Then we have a WA. This is a new one for me too. They have a subcommittee of their transportation committee, which I've been on the transportation committee. And they've been meeting on new ways to look at funding for transportation projects, new and exciting ones. So I just thought.
Doing exciting ways to
Yeah.
divvy up the slice of the pie that remains.
Yeah, it's not clear to me. And so I said, okay.
I think it's been divvied up so many times, it's mush.
Yeah, I'm a little confused how they're going to do that, but that's okay. Friday, again, we've all mentioned the meeting next week at Knoxville. That's a big deal for Dinah. That's really nice. She's coming in. I've been in Knoxville before. It's very, very interesting trade-related activity. So that'll be important. Thank you again for your email over the weekend that she was at her conference and said, Roy, I was thinking about you. They're doing budgets and they're saying exactly what you were saying about all the contingency issues. And so that was nice to receive that. And I too think it's a national tragedy when, I don't care what your party affiliation is, we have no place for anyone being shot. I mean, that's absolutely terrible. So I hope as a nation, we kind of get together on those kinds of things and say, we don't say bad things, really bad. I mean, we don't hurt anybody. That's certainly not. So
Freedom of expression is one of our basic rights.
it should be. Yeah, it should be. So anyway, that's it. And I guess we're going to get a break now.
Yeah, so we usually take a 15-minute break by 3:00. We're running a bit over. We have at least a projected hour and 45 minutes for exec sessions. And I know you all really prefer an hour for dinner before our 6:30 meeting. So would everybody be okay with a 10-minute break instead of a 15?
Oh, yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so why don't we take a 10-minute break and reconvene at 3:50, which only puts us 20 minutes behind, which means we can be done at 5:35 if we're on schedule. So you get 55 minutes from Okay, we'll see you back here at 3:50. And then we'll reconvene into 3 back-to-back executive sessions under the same ORS. So we'll see you all at 6:30.